Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate gire vyakripatamam mande Shri Gurudina Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. And good to see Varshana Mataji after a break. This time you were traveling, so welcome back. Today we will start with a new chapter in the fourth canto, chapter 24, which is chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. So this chapter is essentially about Rudra Gita, and it starts a new phase in the Bhagavatam in terms of describing the pastimes relating to Bhakti. So we saw Bhagavatam began by describing the pastime of Prajapati Daksha and Lord Shiva. Then we saw that of Dhruva Maharaj and Lord Vishnu. Then we saw that of Prithu Maharaj and Lord Vishnu, again, the four Kumaras. And the fourth canto ends with once again Lord Shiva coming, but in a different role. So here is there he was coming as one who is unjustly treated by Daksha and how he reacts to it. Here is appearing as Bhagavan. He is referred to here as Bhagavan, as an exalted personality and one who helps the devotees connect to Lord Vishnu. So this pastime is also used to demonstrate the mood of Lord Shiva. That when he sees the Prachetas heading to perform austerities, he becomes really merciful on them and then engages them in the service of Lord Vishnu. And that is why Lord Shiva is considered to be the greatest of Vaishnava, the greatest of devotee, because when they see somebody who is sincere and qualified, they help that person make spiritual advancement. Right? So Lord Shiva did not encourage them to worship him, but rather he gave them the stotra to worship Lord Vishnu. So it's a long chapter. It's got 79 verses. One of the longest chapters in the Bhagavatam. Actually, it's the third longest chapter in the Bhagavatam. The longest one appears a little few chapters away, which is essentially the conversation between Narad Muni and Prachinavari, the father of the Prachetas. Second longest also appears in the fourth canto, which I believe comes in Dhruva Maharaj's pastime. This is the third longest with 79 verses. It is divided into four sections. The first 15 verses, they talk about the genealogical line of Prithu. Because if you remember, the fourth canto is also tracing the genealogy coming from Swayambhavu Manu. And while it's talking about the genealogy, it is also describing the prominent characters. Like it says, so when Maitreya started describing the genealogy of Manu, And then when he comes to Sati, he says she did not have any offsprings because she left her body at a young age. And then Vidur interrupts him and said, why did she leave at a young age? And then that results in the description of the Prajapati Daksha incident. And then he starts going further down the genealogy, and he talks about Dhruva. And not really further down. Dhruva is almost at, because Dhruva is Lord Brahma as his grandfather. So then he talks about Dhruva. Then he went down the genealogy of Dhruva and came to Prithu. Now Maitreya will go down the genealogy of Prithu and come to the Prachetas. And then he will stop at Prachetas and describe that. So first 15 verses are essentially the genealogical line of Prithu. Then we have in the next 17 verses, from 16 to 32, a description of the meeting between the Prachetas and Lord Shiva. And all this is setting the scene. In the meeting, we see that what is it that made Lord Shiva so merciful on the Prachetas? What are the qualities that they manifested? What are the qualities that Lord Shiva finds attractive? Right. So it's kind of setting the scene. Then the bulk of the chapter, 36 verses, are the Rudra Gita. And then the last 11 verses are the Falshruti, and also instructions on how to chant the Rudra Gita. Okay, so verse 1. Maitre uvacha Vijitashvo dhirajashi Prithu putra Prithu shavaha Yavi yobhyo dadakasta Bhratrabhyo bhratravatsalah. The great sage Maitreya continued. Vijitashva, the eldest son of Maharaj Prithu, who had a reputation like his father, became emperor and gave his younger brothers different directions of the world to govern, for he was very affectionate towards his brothers. So in the previous chapter also we saw, or the previous set of chapters, we had seen how Vijitashva had appeared to take back the 100th horse, sacrificial horse that Indra had stolen. And then several times Indra steals the horse, and Vijitashva is described as so powerful that Indra actually is fearful of him. And when he sees Vijitashva coming, he quickly leaves the horse and runs away. So that's why he gets the name Vijitashva. Ashva means horse, and Vijit is one who wins. So, because previously Maitreya had spoken extensively about the character of Maharaj Prithu, here he is using him as a reference. He is saying that Vijitashva had a reputation like his father. Right? So, having already established the excellence of Prithu Maharaj, Maitreya is simply saying Vijitashva is like his father, excellent like his father. Prabhupada writes that after describing the life and character of Maharaj Prithu in the previous chapter, the great sage Maitreya began to speak about the sons and grandsons in the genealogical line of Prithu dynasty. After the death of Maharaj Prithu, his eldest son Vijitashva became emperor of the world. King Vijitashva was very affectionate towards his younger brothers, and therefore he wanted them to rule different directions of the world. From time immemorial, the eldest son generally becomes king after the death of the previous king. When the Pandavas ruled the earth, Maharaj Yudhishthira, the eldest son of King Pandu, became emperor, and his younger brothers assisted him. Similarly, King Vijitashva's younger brothers were appointed to govern the different directions of the world. So I think the phrase that is used over here is known as primogeniture, which means that deference is given to age. That the elder one becomes naturally the successor of the kingdom or the property of the father. And in a Vedic environment, because the elder brother treats the younger brother as his own son, being very affectionate, he engages them and also takes care of them. Verse 2. Aryaksha dishat prachim dhumrakeshya dakshanam prachitam vrika samgyaya turyam dravena se vibhu. Maharaj Vijitashva offered the eastern part of the world to his brother Aryaksha, the southern part to Dhumrakesh, the western part to Vrika, and the northern part to Dravena. So we have seen that previously it was described that Prithu Maharaj and Queen Archie had 5 children, had 5 sons. So in addition to Vijitashva, they were the 4 brothers. And here Maitreya describes that how he gives each of the brother one of the directions of the earth planet to rule. And they were all ruling under his guidance, under his overall rule. Verse 3. Antardhanagatim sakral labdvanta dhana samgyataha apatyatrayam madhataha shikhandinayam sushamatam. Formerly Maharaj Vijitashva pleased the king of heaven Indra, and from him received the title Antardhan. His wife's name was Shikhandini, and by her he begot 3 good sons. So, little surprising to see that why is Maitreya saying that Vijitashva pleased Indra? Because essentially Indra was trying to steal the horse, and Vijitashva was threatening to kill him and take back the horse. So Indra is essentially in the mood of a Kshatriya. So even though he's a demigod and there is no varnas there, but he is a warrior. And one of the qualities of a Kshatriya is that they appreciate bravery and chivalry in others. So even in the description of the Mahabharata, we see that when opponents are fighting with one another, then if the other opponent is fighting very valiantly, then they will stop to praise the person, or the soldiers from both the fields will praise the person. That Abhimanyu's fighting was praised, Karna's fighting was praised. So regardless of whether the person was inimical or not, the Kshatriyas, they appreciate bravery and chivalry. And in addition to this, we see that Vijitashva refrained from killing Indra. So because of this, Indra was pleased with Vijitashva, and he not only gave him the name, but also he bestowed upon the Siddhi. So the Antardhan is one who disappears. Right? So he gave him that name, and also he gave him that Siddhi to basically appear and disappear. So Prabhupada says that demigods have the great mystic power of being able to appear and disappear according to their will. And since Indra was very pleased with Vijitashva, he bestowed the mystic power upon him. Thus, Vijitashva became known as Antardhan. Okay, verse 4. Avaka pavamanascha Suchirityagnayaha pura Vashishta Shapadutpana Punaryoga Gatim Gataha. The three sons of Maharaj Antarthan were named Pavak, Pavaman, and Suchi. Formerly, these three personalities were the demigods of fire, but due to the curse of the great sage Vashishta, they became the sons of Maharaj Antarthan. As such, they were as powerful as the fire gods, and they attained the destination of mystic yoga power, being again situated as the demigods of fire. So Agni Dev is the presiding deity, but then it is also understood that there are several other deities who are also responsible for Agni. Some of them are certain kinds of flames, some of them have different qualities. So it's not clearly talked about the pastime here, that what led Vashishta to be cursed and what led Vashisht to curse these demigods. I could not find also. If anybody knows, be happy to hear. I think the most prominent pastime with relation to Indra, with relation to Agni Dev, is when Bhrigu Muni curses him, because he bears. So when the wife of Bhrigu Muni, Puloma, is kidnapped, then the Rakshas who kidnapped her asks the fire to bear testimony. And at that time, Agnidev gives a very neutral answer. He basically quotes scriptures, and Bhrigu Muni gets angry at him, saying that you were present over there, so you should have basically clearly put the blame on the. So when the demon kidnaps the wife of Bhrigu, she's pregnant at the time. And while he is kidnapping her, the child falls out, and that essentially becomes Chavaka Rishi, who later on marries Chaman Rishi, and he later on marries Sukanya. So that pastime is given in the Mahabharata. But this particular pastime of Vashishta cursing these demigods, I was not able to get. But what the verse says is that because of the curse, they were forced to take human birth, and they appeared as the sons of Antarthan. And by the performance of mystic yoga, they again returned back to their original position as being fire gods. Verse 5. Antardhanu nabhasvatyam avidhanam avindata ya indram ashvahartaram vidvanapi najagnivan. Maharaj Antarthan had another wife named Nabhasvati, and by her he was happy to beget another son named Havirdhan. Since Maharaj Antarthan was very liberal, he did not kill Indra while the demigod was engaged in stealing his father's horse at the sacrifice. So Srila Prabhupada writes that it is understood from various scriptures and Puranas that the king of heaven, Indra, was very expert in stealing and kidnapping. He could steal anything without being visible to the proprietor, and he could kidnap anyone's wife without being detected. Once he raped the wife of Gautam Muni by using his disappearing act. And similarly, by becoming invisible, he stole the horse of Maharaj Prithu. Although in human society such activities are considered abominable, the demigod Indra was not considered to be degraded by them. And some understanding why not degraded. Prabhupada gives that firstly because of his continuous devotion to the Lord. So the devotee may sometimes fall down and commit abominable acts, but Krishna says, "Api chet sudaracha bhajate mam ananyaba sadhu reva," that they should be considered as sadhu because they will eventually be reinstated. Right. So that's one reason. Second reason is that great personalities, they can actually absorb these impiousness because of their overabundance of piety. So it becomes like a small spot on the moon. Now, so those who do not have that level of piety, their impiety might overwhelm them. But Devas, and especially Indra, is an exalted personality who has reached that position because of perfectly practicing the codes of the scriptures. So Sukadeva Goswami, in this context, he mentions in the 10th canto that powerful controllers is not harmed by apparently audacious transgression of morality we may see in them, for they are just like fire, which devours everything fed into it and remains unpolluted. Right? So just because they have that Shakti because of their past piousness. This verse, of course, is in a little different context. Sukadeva Goswami speaks this to Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj, he has just finished describing the rasa dance. Or will not finish, but he's relishing the description of the rasa dance, and then Parikshit Maharaj says that isn't that like bad when Krishna, who is the emblem of religion, is consorting with the wives of other men? And then Sukadeva Goswami says this verse and stops describing. The Acharya said that he realizes that Parikshit Maharaj is not ready to receive the more intimate descriptions of Krishna's pastimes. Third reason is that exalted personalities may commit a mistake, but they quickly regret and rectify. So that's their glory. That they recognize that they have made a mistake. They exhibit genuine regret, and they rectify. Right? So we see few of the cases great personalities committing mistakes, including Indra. When Indra was, when he came in front of Prithu Maharaj, he was genuinely ashamed of his act and glorifies Prithu Maharaj for his magnanimity. We see that when Dhruva was killing the Yakshas and Sambhav Manu came and forbade him, he recognized that he made a mistake and quickly stopped and went away. So even though a mistake is done, but its effect is minimized. Related to this also is that pointing out the faults of others will cause one's own downfall. So we see how the sons of Marichi, when they were criticizing Brahma, they became contaminated and were born as demons. We see the case of Chitraketu also, that when Chitraketu was not really criticizing, but kind of making fun of Shiva and Parvati, there was downfall. He became cursed. He was cursed by Parvati Devi, and he became Rakasur. So the contra side of it is that even if one has an apparent fall down, then one should be careful not to criticize them, unless one can do service. Like, Manu came and criticized Dhruva, but because it was for the benefit of Dhruva Maharaj. And so unless the person can do service. When Lord Brahma was criticized for running after Vak, then we see that some of his sons, they went to him and they spoke very respectfully to him, that please don't do this. And there was no fault on their side. Lord Brahma understood that he was making a mistake, gave up his body, and then again resolved to continue with the service. But while the sons of Marichi was laughing at them, they were at fault. So one might think that the sons of Marichi, they were more passively criticizing because they didn't go to Brahma and criticize him. Right? The others, they actually went to Brahma and said this is not right. But the mood was different. The ones who went to Brahma, they went there because they thought they were in a position to help Lord Brahma. And they did so in that mood which Brahma recognized and was grateful for. And then final understanding is that sometimes when very great personalities commit faults, one can understand that they're doing it as a service to the Lord. So when Arjun went into illusion, Gita was spoken. When Parishad Maharaj put the snake on Shamik Rishi, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. When Chitraketu, he criticized Lord Shiva, and then the wonderful instructions of Vritasur came. When Jaya Vijay offended the four Kumaras, then they got an opportunity to serve the Lord. So this, of course, is for personalities who are very close to Krishna, right? And their falls or their apparent fall down, they're simply doing it as a service to Krishna. In the purport in the third canto, and this is the pastime of Brahma and Vak, Srila Prabhupada, he writes that how to regard such activities by great personalities that are not in accordance with their principles of dharma or their greatness. So he says that firstly, one should use discrimination, which means that do not get misled by the activities and try and emulate them. Right? So that's what discrimination does. One should not think that if Brahma did this, it is Brahma was running after his daughter, it is okay for me to run after others' daughters. I'm a little better. Or if Arjun was under illusion, then okay for me to stay under illusion, right? So discrimination is important there. Second important thing Prabhupada says is that one should not judge. So essentially separate the act from the person. The act can be looked at it from various perspectives, not the person. Right? So if one starts judging the person, then one is quickly going into the area of offenses. But one can always judge the act. That is this in relationship to the principles of dharma? Is this in the best interest? And accordingly react to it, but not the person. Third one Prabhupada says is that one should look at what is the personal lesson in this for me. That if somebody as great as Arjun can fall under illusion, then I know for certain that I am already under illusion. which means that I need to take more shelter of Gita. If somebody as great as Brahma can fall victim to lust, then how much more would it be true for me? So one should be able to extract the personal lessons. Like in the Prithu Maharaj Indra pastime, right? We were trying to see the lesson. One of the lessons was that when leaders have conflict, then the impact is widespread. So one has to be very careful if one is in a leadership position to avoid conflict, especially public conflicts, that the responsibility of the leaders is more than others. We also see how Prithu Maharaj, even though he was on the right, accepted the inferior position. He said, let Indra be the 100. Be famous for being performer of 100 sacrifices. But the result was that he got the mercy of Vishnu and the 4 Kumaras. Right? So there's a difference between being right and proving yourself right. Being right is good enough. And that attracts the mercy. And the final is, and this is when it is more contemporary, that how can I best serve? When somebody is seeing such kinds of acts being happen, if the person is in a position to constructively serve, then the person should, in that mood, separating the act from the person, not being misled, come to a position of where how can I best serve. And this is an area where one has to be careful about, right? So sometimes how can I best serve becomes a catch-all. Person says, Prabhu, just in the mood of service, I'm telling you this. And then they go ahead and tell you that a lot of things that may or may not be best serving the purpose, but they're just prefix and suffix that I'm just telling you it as a service, and you don't do this nicely, and this is where you're lacking, and this is where I saw you were taking a nap, and etc. And then I'm telling you it as a service. So one has to be very, very careful. So firstly, one should never give unsolicited feedback to elders. Now, solicited is fine. That the elders ask that can you give some feedback, and that is fine. I remember once Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, he was coming up with a newer edition of a reader and brahmachari practices. So he sent me the draft saying that I'd like you to edit it. And then I started reading it, and then there were opportunities to edit it. But then I wrote back to him, I said, Maharaj, I'm not very sure if I qualified to correct you. And I don't want to commit any offenses. And then Maharaj immediately wrote back and he said that I'm asking you to do this service because I feel that this will help me serve the others better. So don't look upon it as criticism, but look upon it as you doing service along with me to help others. So that gave me a lot of assurance. And then, of course, I went ahead and did the editing. But otherwise, one should never give unsolicited feedback to elders. Then, if there is a situation that one wants to give feedback to peers or to those who are junior, then first question should be asked that, am I the right person? That do I have the qualifications to give the feedback? Right. Second is that do I have the right intention? Am I actually giving this as a mood of service to the others? So intention is not just you, but the other person also. And so you might genuinely have the right intention, but because your relationship with the other person is weak, then you know for sure that the feedback will not be taken properly. That means if you still go ahead and give feedback, that is not right intention. And so it's not just that one looks at it unilaterally, one has to also look at it how it's going to be received. Third is that needs to be given at the right time. And right time just means that one should not criticize a person in front of others. One should not criticize a person at a time when the person is disturbed. One should not criticize a person when the person is feeling low or down, and then say, Prabhu, I see that you're sad, but let me tell you that you have all these faults, and I'm saying this now in a moral service. So timing is important. And then finally, one should give it in the right way. So one should ask oneself that, will this open the heart of the person? Right? There's this famous conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Tamal Krishna Maharaj. That Tamal Krishna Maharaj, once he did something that was very difficult. He was trying to get some documents signed or something, and was having a lot of challenges. And then finally he gets it done, and he goes to Prabhupada, and with a lot of pride he says to Prabhupada, I got this done. Right? And Prabhupada could detect the pride, but he did not say that, don't be proud. So he starts off by saying that there is Krishna, and 3/4 of his creation is the spiritual world, and 1/4 is the material world. In the material world, there are unlimited number of planets. One of this is the Earth planet. There are unlimited number of jivas. And Tamal Krishna is one of the jivas. And he's standing over here feeling so proud about what he achieved. And of course, this is shared by Tamal Krishna Maharaj himself, because there was nobody else in the room at the time. And he says that just looking at the whole perspective, from Krishna's perspective, he said, I felt, smaller than a speck of dust at that time. And then it just gave him this sense of humility. So the way the feedback is given is also very important. Will it open the heart of the person? If the person is not going to be receptive, better not to give the feedback. Okay, moving on, we'll do a couple of more verses and then stop the discussion. Rajnam vritem karadanam dandashulka didarunam manyamano divdasatra vyajena visasrajaha. Whenever Antradhan, the supreme royal power, had to extract taxes, punish his citizens, or fine them severely, he was not willing to do so. Consequently, he retired from the execution of such duties and engaged himself in the performance of different sacrifices. So Prabhupada mentioned that this is one of the duties of the king, that the king has to protect and punish. So if the king does not punish, then the elements that are criminal, the elements that are not properly situated will become stronger and stronger. We saw that in the case of when Maharaj Vena died, because there was no king, then naturally speaking, the impious elements, the robbers, thieves, and bandits, they became stronger. So it's one of the duties of the king to punish them. And the other is to take taxes. Because by taxes, they are able to administer the kingdom. So Maharaj Antardhan, because of his of his soft heart, he was not willing to do that. Now, in this context, it is a fault, because a properly situated king is expected to do that. Right? Prithu Maharaj was glorified for doing that. That for his citizens, he was like a father, but for those who were transgressing, then he was like as severe as thunderbolt to them. But because Antardhan is an exalted personality, we see that he takes this fault, recognizes it, and takes appropriate action. So he gives up his role as being the emperor, and he takes to the performance of yajnas. So he did not leave out of illusion. So, and this we can see later on, because Maharaj Antardhan destination is exalted. So he is not being punished for giving up his duties. Right? Krishna was chastising Arjuna, don't give up your duty because of weakness of heart. Antardhan's situation is that he understood that he was not qualified to rule the kingdom because of this reason. So better than having a not qualified king, better than that is for the person to give up. So modern day leaders, they recognize the fact that they are not qualified, but they still hold on because of personal ego. And King Antardhan had that maturity that he left, but not out of illusion, but he left at an appropriate time in an appropriate way, in the sense that there was succession. So he did not leave the kingdom without a king. Okay, we'll do one more verse. Tatrapiham sampurusham parmatatmanatmatra yajam lokataamapa kushalena samadhina. Although Maharaj Antardhan was engaged in performing sacrifices, because he was a self-realized soul, he very intelligently rendered devotional service to the Lord, who eradicates all the fears of his devotees. By thus worshipping the Supreme Lord, Maharaj Antardhan, wrapped in ecstasy, attained his planet very easily. So, Antardhan is shown as following a practice very similar to that of Prithu Maharaj, that he performed karmakand. He performed sacrifices externally, while internally meditating on his service to the Lord. The word hamsam is translated by Srila Prabhupada as one who kills the distress of his kinsman. And Prabhupada considers this to be one of the qualities of the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti states that that Maharaj Antardhan, he worshipped in Karma Yoga through the performance of Karmakand with detachment. Karmakand with detachment is yoga, Karma Yoga. So he worshipped in Karma Yoga the incarnation of the Lord known as Hamsaptar. So he considers Hamsam to be pointing to Hamsaptar. And finally, he attained the planet of Lord Hamsa. So the Hamsaptar is not a very widely known avatar. The description appears in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, when the incarnations of the Lord are being described. And there, and it's said that Narad was taught the science of Bhakti by Hamsaptar. And Hamsaptar also gave instructions to the four Kumars. So actually in the Kumar Sampradaya that is descending from the four Kumars, Lord Hamsaptar appears in that as the instructor of Sanat Kumar. So he gave instructions to Narad on Bhakti, he gave instructions to Sanat Kumar on Gyan Mishrit Bhakti, to Narad Muni he gave instructions to Shuddha Bhakti. And according to some, Hamsaptar appears in the planet of Lord Brahma. So I don't know the words, but there's a reference to Satya over there. So according to some, it refers to Satyalok, that he appeared in Brahma's planet, and according to some, it is that he appeared in Satyuga. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he once again, and we see that Prabhupada do that in this chapter quite a bit, at least in three of the verses in the purport, he'll make this point that the chanting of the Lord's name is superior to all this karma kand and yoga, etc. So here Prabhupada says that devotional service is known as kirtan yagya. And by practicing sankirtan yaga, one is very easily elevated to the planet where the Supreme Lord resides. Out of the 5 kinds of liberation, achieving the same planet where the Lord resides and living with the Lord here is called Salokya liberation. So it's understood that Antardhan got Salokya Mukti, that he went to the same planet as that of Lord Hamsa. Okay, so let me pause here and see if there is discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Just a question on the qualification to whom we can preach, Prabhuji. Like, as an example, today only I got to know he was fairly new person to me. I'm speaking and he is very fluently telling that verse in Bhagavad Gita and this verse in Bhagavad Gita. But problem is like he's impersonalist. So he was saying a context, he's very excited that, somebody is speaking about Bhagavad Gita and, like interested to hear. So he keep on talking. So I'm just hearing. So he went on saying that, like, the perfection of one's life is merging on to the Lord. He didn't use the word Brahman, but, merging into the Lord. And then I said that, like, I mildly gave my objection, saying that, it's not that merging into the Lord, and we can never become Lord. That point I emphasized. And he said, no, yeah, you're right. We can't become Lord, but as much as we should try to become as much as possible God. I was thinking he's an elderly man, and it's one of my first call with him. So I am following Vaishnava philosophy. So at least as per that, it is like that. And then I stopped because I was thinking our Bhagavad Gita says in the 2.12 also we are eternal. We have some reasons to share to him, but I'm feeling I'm not qualified to tell him he's an elderly man and he is already into some philosophy. So and I was thinking later that I'm not qualified to tell anyone, like either they may be elderly or I am not responsible for them with so many reasons. mostly I am not qualified to share, my opinion with anyone. So if that would be the case, how would we actually preach? That's what I was thinking. So you can share some uh, guidance, because it's not that somebody is saying God is not a person and I keep my mouth shut. That also I didn't like that idea. So
So thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, it's not a very uncommon incident, especially when you're speaking with people from Indian origin. My sense is that most of Indians are impersonalists. They may not know it, but they're mostly not even impersonalists. They're mostly Mayavadis, mostly with the sense that purpose is to become one with God, and they'll just say it and move on. There's of course no harm in sharing your opinion with the person. Lot of this interaction, at least the way I look at it, is that is it going to help the person? Right? If the person has a relationship with you, his heart is open, you see that he is conducive to suggestion, makes sense to uh, basically share your views. No, this is not necessarily criticism, right? That the whole point, giving the distinction between what the person is and what the person is doing. So rather than saying that you're a Mayavadi, you're going to go to hell and you're going to go to repeated births, one can just focus on the philosophy. That this philosophy it comes actually later on in this chapter that Prabhupada writes about it, that this philosophy was preached by Sri Prashanth Acharya for a certain reason, but does not have any credence. It's not out of the Vedas. People like to it because everybody likes the notion of being God. Having said that, I've had this experience myself. I've had this conversation. I haven't seen even one person change because of that, right? So I still do. I still think that, because we are representing Prabhupada, it makes sense to at least express in a way that it does not fracture the relationship, make the way the other person does not become offensive.
yes.
In terms of qualification, I think one of the sutras that we can apply is, as Maitreya says, that, yatha shrutim, yatha matim, yatha gatim, that you can always repeat what you said, even if you may not be at a point where you understand, know everything about everything. You know all about your own weaknesses. That my knowledge of philosophy is still growing. It's not complete, but we are still hearing from Prabhupada. We are still reading his purports, so we can repeat with confidence. Prabhupada's instruction was that you don't have to. Earlier on, your disciples say, just repeat what I'm saying. That's enough, right? So Shrutim is speak that, right? Matim is if you understand something, you can explain it. I guess, I've heard Krishna say that, you're not the soul. And this is how I understand it, that the body is changing, but I am still the same. I still feel like, regardless of what my body is, and, experientially. So, intellectually, I understand this, right? And Gatim is, you can speak even more strongly experientially. That I heard that chanting of the holy name is powerful. I can understand it's recommended for the age of Kali, and I actually do it every day. And once in a while, I do feel the potency of it. Sometimes I don't, but once in a while, I do feel that is Gatim, that you're actually practicing it, and then you can speak on it. Right? So that way, we can establish our credibility, and also not be scared that we are artificially taking on a position, right? So we don't want to say that I have experienced the ecstasy of devotional service, love with Krishna, right? Because even though we know, Shrutim, we know that is there, but it's so we can always say the scriptures say That when you interact with Krishna, then the bliss of Anand is 1,000,000,000 times more than the bliss of Brahman, etc. I know that because I heard. But we don't want to say that I'm experiencing that myself. That part is not being honest. So this way we can Prabhupada wanted us to preach. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted us to preach, Yare dekho taake bolo Krishna Upadesh, right? So that's our parampara. So we should stay true to it. But then at the same time, we should also stay true to the essence of the preaching. The preaching should be to cause a change in the heart of the other person. If we are not causing that, then the way that we preach is by staying silent and let the other person be inspired by our acts, by our activity. Right? That's how we preach.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It's very helpful. Some of my implicit questions also you cleared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just want to add on what you said. As you said earlier, when Parikshit Maharaj has a question about the gopis to Sukadev Goswami, and then, by the reply of Parikshit Maharaj, he knows that it's not the time to go deeper into that. I think the same apply here. If whoever you're talking to, depending on in which direction the conversation is going, whether the person is appreciating what you're saying or becoming more offensive, then from that direction you can say whether you continue the conversation or you stop here. I would say this also.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's a good point, a checkpoint for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So continuing with verse 8. Avirdhana Davirdhani Vidurasut Shatsutam Barishadam Gayam Shuklam Krishnam Satyam Jitavratam. Havirdan, the son of Maharaj Antardhan, had a wife named Havirdhani, who gave birth to 6 sons named Barisat, Gaya, Shukla, Krishna, Satya, and Jitavrat. So, as we know, he's describing the genealogy. The son of Prithu Maharaj was Antardhan. Antardhan, amongst other sons, he had from his second wife, a son named Havirdhan. He had a wife named Havirdhani. My understanding is that she probably got the name because she was his wife. And then he gave birth to 6 sons, the eldest of whom was Barishat. And Barishat basically now becomes one of the anchors of the coming pastime. Verse 9. Barisat summahabhago Havirdhani prajapati kriyakandeshu nishnatu yogeshu cha kurutva. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidur, Havirdhan's very powerful son named Barishat was very expert in performing various kinds of fruitive sacrifices. And he was also expert in the practice of mystic yoga. By his great qualifications, he became known as Prajapati." So this verse is glorifying Barishat. And Barishat, we'll see later on, is addressed by different names. Sometimes he's called Bari, sometimes he's called Prachina Bari, sometimes he's called Prachina Barishat, sometimes he's called Prajapati. And he is described as an expert in Karam Kand as well as mystic yoga. So we see that one of the things that happened in this succession is that Prithu Maharaj was also an expert in Karam Kand. And so was so was Antardhan. He was also an expert in Karam Kand. But they performed it with a mood of devotion to Krishna. So the external was observable, but not so much the internal. But because that internal was there, they reached the supreme destination. Right? Prithu Maharaj went back to Vaikuntha, and Antardhan, as per Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he also went back to Vaikuntha. So, because they're internally they were connected. However, we see in the case of Barishat that he took the external, but not so much the internal. So essentially, he became an expert in Karam Kand and also mystic yoga. Prabhupada also comments on the fact that he's a Prajapati because he undertook this task of having children and increasing the population. And Brahma is the original Prajapati, and then he has sons like Daksha and Manu. They are Prajapatis. So similarly, Barisha, the son of Havirdan, he was a Prajapati. Verse 10. Yasyedam deva yajjanam anuyagyam vitanvataha prachinagra kusherasi astritam vasudatalam. Maharaj Barishat executed many sacrifices all over the world. He scattered kusha grass and kept the tops of the grasses pointed eastward. So one of the names of kusha is Baris, and because he covered the face of the earth with kusha grass, he is also known as Barishat. So we know that kusha grass is one of the essential components in performing yajnas. And in the past, the sages, they had performed austerities and got this benediction from the Lord that anywhere in the world, kusha grass would grow. So it's one of the most widely available grass. You can get it in India, US, and it grows almost everywhere to help people do sacrifices. So essentially, there's no place on the planet that one cannot get this ingredient. I guess if one is in the polar areas, maybe not, but not many people live there. So the sacrifices that he performed were for the pleasure of the demigods. So that is why his sacrifices are described as Deva Yagyam. Deva Yagyam is that for satisfying the demigods, which comes in the category of Karma. And it said that he executed many sacrifices. Prabhupada says what it means is that as soon as he finished one yajna in one place, he started performing another yajna in the immediate vicinity. And here once again Prabhupada, so in the 7th verse Prabhupada made this point. Here in the 10th verse he again makes the point that in the current day and age, the yajna to be performed is Sankirtan yajna. So that's just like he was performing Deva Yagyam all over the world. In the current days and age, current Sankirtan Yajna needs to be performed all over the world. Akhand Sankirtan Yajna, which means that there is never a time when Sankirtan is not going on somewhere. And in Mayapur and Vrindavan, they have Akhand Sankirtan, which means that even just at that place, there's 24 hours Kirtan going on. In Mayapur, at the and the Prabhupada's Samadhi, there is 24-hour Kirtan going on. In Vrindavan, right in front of Radha Shyam Sundar, there's 24-hour Kirtan. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he actually repeats the Hare Krishna Mahamantra twice in the purport. It just shows his enthusiasm and sense of urgency that he's trying to impart. And this is the age in which one needs to perform Mahamantra everywhere, all the time. Okay, verse 11. Samudrim deva devoktam upayem shatadrutim yam vikshacharu sarvangim kishorim shushutvalankratam parikramanaktem udvahe chakame abme shukhim niva. Maharaj Barishad, henceforth known as Prachinavari, was ordered by the supreme demigod Brahma to marry the daughter of the ocean named Shatadruti. Her bodily features were completely beautiful, and she was very young. She was decorated with proper garments, and when she came into the marriage arena and began circumambulating it, the fire god Agni became so attracted to her that he desired her company exactly as he had formerly desired to enjoy Shuki. So Prabhupada talks about this in the purport that Shukimiva is significant because Agni became attracted to Shatadruti. So while they were circumambulating the fire, Agni is supposed to be a witness. But here, instead of bearing witness, he himself became lusty and attracted to the beauty of Shatadruti. Just as he was previously attracted to the beauty of Shuki, the wife of Saptarishi. When the fire god had been present long ago at the assembly of Saptarishi, he was attracted by the beauty of Shuki when she was circumambulating in the same way. Agni's wife named Swaha took the form of Shuki and enjoyed sex life with Agni. Vishwanath Chakravarti also comments on this. There's a slightly different description of this episode, that when the Saptarishis were performing yagyas, then Agni became attracted to all of their wives, all the wives of the Saptarishis. And then his wife, Swaha, she noted his infatuation, and then she took the form of all the wives and then engaged in conjugal union with Agni. So when Agni was satisfied, then she cast away his semen in the form of Shuki. So Shuka is known as also semen. So in the form of Shuki and some reeds, basically threw it away in the grass and went away. So this is there to indicate the incomparable beauty of Shatadruti. The Prabhupada also comments on Alamkratam, Shushmita Alamkratam, that she was opulently decorated with ornaments. And Prabhupada mentions that the wife dresses up nicely, is opulently decorated, so that the mind and the heart of the husband is always fixed on the wife. So this way the wife acts as a fortress for the desires of the husband, because the man is considered to be weaker as far as sex desires are concerned. So when the wife the husband is completely satisfied with the beauty, the opulence, the chastity, the relationship with the wife, then his mind will not go anywhere. And while it is good from a material perspective, maybe not the best from spiritual aspect, unless all this is dovetailed to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says that when the bridegroom finds the wife very beautiful, the attraction between them immediately becomes very strongly fixed. As stated in Bhagavatam, men and women are naturally attracted to one another, and when they're united by marriage, that attraction becomes very strong. Being so strongly attached, and here Prabhupada talks about how this could be detrimental if it is not properly anchored. So he says, when one is so strongly attached, and the bridegroom, he attempts to set up a nice homestead, a good field for producing grains, children, wealth. And in this way, the man becomes more and more entangled in the material conception of mine. He begins to think, this is mine. So he looks at his family, looks at his children, looks at his wife, looks at his property. He says, this is mine. And then he also thinks that it is I who am acting. I am supporting my family. I created my children. I am the protector of my wife. So this aham mameti, this essentially is Prabhupada says that this is how the illusion of material existence is perpetuated. Okay, next verse 12. Vibhudashura Gandharva Muni Siddha Narogaha Naroraga Vijita Surya Dikshu Kamanyatye Vanopraha. When Shatadruti was thus being married, the demons, the denizens of Gandharva-loka, the great sages, and the denizens of Siddhaloka, the earthly planets, the Nagaloka and Nagaloka, although highly exalted, were all captivated by the tinkling of the ankle bell. So, if you notice, the personalities that are mentioned over here are either from the lower planets, or they are from the intermediate planets. So we say Om Bhurva Bhuvassaha. So Swa Bhuvassaha Sa is Svarga, where the demigods live. And in between them is the planets of the Gandharvas and the Siddhas and Apsaras. And below, of course, is the Nagalok and the other planets. So the demons and the Gandharvas, the sages, the Siddhas, they became attracted by the tinkling of her ankle bells. Prabhupada has a very interesting purport here, and I wanted to just extract a few points and share them with you. So Prabhupada says that the beauty of a woman is enhanced when she becomes a mother. The beauty of a woman as a mother far exceeds that of a woman as an object of sex desire. And Prabhupada would always encourage devotee families to have lots of children. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, because generally, an unmarried young girl is considered to be more attractive than when she's married and mothered. But the point that Prabhupada is making over here is that when one looks at the beauty of a mother, it is not tinged with sex desire. Because naturally people are more respectful. They see the woman as a mother first. So the natural beauty of the woman is appreciated without the contamination of lusty desires. So that's why Prabhupada makes this point that the beauty of a woman is enhanced. In case of Shatruduti, even though she was not a mother, but she was so beautiful that she attracted the entire universe, intermarriage ceremony. Now, why were they attracted by the tinkling of the ankle bells? And the understanding is because as a chaste woman, her body was fully covered. Since they could only see the feet of Shatraduti, they became attracted to the ankle bells. Now, one may question that if they could not see Shatraduti, why did they become attracted to her? Why did they become infatuated by her? And the understanding is that these are great personalities. That the Siddhas and the great sages, Agni Dev, they could see beyond material veils. But the focus here is on the ankle bells, indicating that the body of Shatraduti was fully covered. She was not contributing to this in any way. So it's not that she was scantily dressed or provocatively dressed. She was chaste to the point that only the ankle bells were visible, but the people were so attracted to her beauty that they became fixated by the ankle bells. And when there's Prabhupada talks in the purport also about Vishwamitra and how he became attracted to the tinkling of the ankle bells of Manika. So Prabhupada says the conclusion is that no one can save himself from the attraction of women, even though he be an exalted demigod or an inhabitant of the higher planets. Only a devotee of the Lord who is attracted by Krishna can escape the lures of women. Once one is attracted by Krishna, the illusory energy of the world cannot attract him. And generally speaking, we also have the understanding that this is as much applicable to men as it is to women. So just like men are attracted to women, women are attracted to men. And in both the cases, the real protection is that one transforms that attraction to Krishna. Okay, we'll do 2 more verses and then pause for discussion. Prachina Varishaha Putra Shatrutyam Dasa Bhavan Tulyanam Vrata Sarve Dharmasnata Prachetashaha. King Prachina Bari begot 10 children in the womb of Shatadruti. All of them were equally endowed with religiosity, and all of them were known as the Prachetas. So the word Dharmasnataha is significant, Prabhupada says, because the 10 children were all merged in the practice of religion. In addition, they possessed all good qualities. One is supposed to be perfect when one is perfectly religious, perfect in the execution of one's vow to render devotional service, perfect in knowledge, perfect in good behavior, and so all the Prachetas were on the same level of perfection. So we see Prabhupada speaking very, very affectionately about the Prachetas, because as we will see later on, that they will exemplify Shuddha Bhakti, devotional service uncontaminated by the modes. So even though here it is spoken in a general way that they were dharma snataha, that dharma is religiosity, and snata was completely absorbed in it. But because of the unfolding pastime and the fact that they are actually dharma that they're actually situated in is in devotional service. So Prabhupada speaks very, very glowingly about them. And the word prachetas means that one who is extremely intelligent or very observant and intelligent, or intelligent, but essentially it refers to the fact of one who has extraordinary intelligence. So we'll do this verse 14, and then after that we'll pause for discussion. Pitradishta praja sarge tapassernavam avishan dashvarsha saharsrani tapasarcham tapaspatim. When all these prachetas were ordered by the father to marry and beget children, they all entered the ocean and practiced austerity and penances for 10,000 years. Thus they worshipped the master of all austerity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the reason for performing austerities is because they considered begetting children as a service to the Lord. And because they wanted to do the service perfectly, they wanted to be sure that they're purified and qualified to do that service. So they decided to worship the Lord through their austerity. So by tolerating inconvenience, one develops tolerance. That's why austerities are glorified. So by the process of austerities, one begins to learn the control of mind. Right? In the 6th chapter, same point Krishna also makes. Arjuna objects, and Krishna says, control of the mind. That's the whole process of performing austerities. And one's senses are purified. So these 3 qualities of tolerance, control, and purification, which are coming from austerities. Like when you perform austerities, you learn to tolerate the inconveniences. You learn to control your mind, which says, don't perform these austerities, go the easier route. And then you're also purified. So these 3 qualities of tolerance, control, and purification are considered essential before entering the dangerous grihastha ashram. So grihastha ashram sometimes is called dangerous because it is full of traps that can suck one down to material attachment. But if one has already developed the qualities of control, then one is not going to indulge so much in sense gratification. And as part of grihastha, there are so many pushings that make more money, and my children should be the best. So the person is buffeted with all these desires. So tolerance is an important quality. And purification, because one does not need to should not enter grihastha in an enjoying mood. That this is a license for me to have sex or to have unlimited sense gratification. But one should be purified. We see the same process in other great personalities, like Kardama Muni. When he desired to marry, he went to the banks of Bindu Sarovar and did austerities for 10,000 years. Similarly, Daksha, he did austerities, and this will appear later on in the 6th chapter, that he had 10,000 sons known as the Haryashvas, and then he had 1,000 sons known as the Savalashvas. And being a Prajapati, he wanted them to carry on the lineage, so he ordered all of them to have children. But before that, he says, you go and perform austerities. Before having children, of course, Narayan intercepted them and made them all sannyasis. But the principle was there, that before entering into grihastha ashram, one should develop this through austerities, these qualities of tolerance, control, and purification. Prabhupada also notes that they resolved to perform austerities for 10,000 years. So from this, one can understand that this incident took place in Satyug, where people lived for 100,000 years. And then it is also significant, by their austerity, they worship the master of austerity, Shri Krishna. So it means that they were properly situated. So unlike Barishad, who was worshipping the demigods, they were properly situated. So they were performing austerities, but just like Prithu Maharaj, for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada said, if one achieves the favor of the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood that he has already finished all kinds of austerities, penances, and attained efficiency in their execution. So this is essentially a segue of Prabhupada making the same point. Third time Prabhupada is making within a course of 10 verses that how important it is the practice of Sankirtan in this case. Prabhupada says that by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, one who chants the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, attains the highest perfection stage, which had previously been attained by persons who entered the ocean and executed austerities for 10,000 years. So he's saying that one should not get demoralized by the fact that forget about 10,000 years, difficult to go into the ocean and do for even 1 day. So one simply gets demoralized and gives other process because it's same effect, and not just same effect, actually a much higher goal can be achieved. Okay, so I'll pause over here and I'll end over here and see if we have any discussions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. One question, Prabhuji. Like you mentioned that Agni become attracted to Shatadruti, and in the previous situation also with Suki, that he was attracted, and then like Swaha Devi, taking the form of the wives of Saptarshis. And I think in this case, Shatadruti's form also, I think she took. Like, is there any consequences that Agni went through? And also, in that case, like even Swaha Devi also, taking the form of exalted persons also seems, especially for this kind of activities, because the Agni's consciousness is he is enjoying with Saptarshi's wife, and she is also taking that desire as an advantage. Both look sinful from both perspectives. So any consequences they have been through for such that seems offensive to me, Prabhuji?
Not that I know of. I don't know the pastimes in a lot of detail, just so to speak, the highlights of it. This is what happened. But not that I know of that there were any consequences of it. He did not act upon it. Like for Shatadruti, he didn't act upon it. So there were desires. He was not the only one desiring. Right? He says, Maitreya says that demigods and nagas and so many were desiring. So, but no,
sure, don't
know the answer to your question.
Yeah. And Shatadruti's case, Swaha Devi not took her form and all. This episode not happened, right, Prabhuji? Only in
That's not, no. This was only in the case of the Saptarishis.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you,
Prabhuji. Okay, so we'll end over here. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanand, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.